The day it all began, I was going about my mundane routine, utterly unaware of the horrifying ordeal that awaited me. It was a crisp autumn morning, the leaves outside my window painted in shades of crimson and gold. I glanced at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, expecting nothing out of the ordinary. What I saw, however, was anything but ordinary. As I leaned in to wash my face, I noticed something strange in the mirror. My reflection stared back at me, its eyes filled with an unsettling malevolence. The corners of its mouth curled upward, forming a wicked grin. My heart skipped a beat, and I stumbled backward, my hands trembling. "What the hell?" I muttered, my voice quivering with fear. I blinked, thinking it was a trick of the light, but when I opened my eyes again, my reflection's grin remained. It was as if the reflection had a mind of its own, independent of my movements. My first instinct was to leave the bathroom, but morbid curiosity kept me rooted in place. I leaned in closer, my eyes locked with my reflections, and I could see the malice in its gaze. It was as though it was mocking me, reveling in my terror. "Stop it!" I yelled, my voice trembling. "This isn't real." I splashed cold water on my face, hoping to snap out of whatever nightmare I'd stumbled into. When I looked up again, my reflection was still grinning. Panic welled up inside me, and I stumbled out of the bathroom, slamming the door shut behind me. I tried to convince myself that I was hallucinating, that stress or lack of sleep had played tricks on my mind. But deep down, I knew this was no ordinary hallucination. There was something sinister about that grin, something that filled me with dread. For the rest of the day, I avoided mirrors, but I couldn't escape the feeling that something was watching me, something malevolent lurking just beyond my line of sight. My unease grew as the day wore on, and by evening, I was a nervous wreck. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the image of my grinning reflection. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it, that wicked grin etched into my mind. Sleep eluded me, and I felt as though I was losing my grip on reality. As the hours ticked by, I heard a faint, rhythmic tapping coming from the direction of the bathroom. At first, I dismissed it as a figment of my imagination, but the sound grew louder, more insistent. I couldn't ignore it any longer. With trembling hands, I grabbed a flashlight from my bedside table and cautiously made my way to the bathroom. The tapping grew louder with each step, and my heart pounded in my chest. I pushed open the bathroom door, and what I saw nearly made me drop the flashlight in shock. My reflection, still grinning that malevolent grin, was tapping its fingers on the mirror from the other side. I stumbled backward, my breath catching in my throat. This couldn't be happening. It was impossible. But there it was, my reflection defying the laws of reality, taunting me with its eerie grin. I shone the flashlight around the room, desperately searching for answers. The bathroom was empty, save for the reflection in the mirror. There was no one else there. No trickery, no hidden wires, nothing that could explain what I was seeing. I backed away from the bathroom, my mind racing. I needed help, someone to explain this madness. I grabbed my phone and dialed my best friend, Sarah. She had always been the rational one, the voice of reason in times of crisis. "Sarah," I said, my voice trembling, "you won't believe what's happening." I recounted the events of the day, the grinning reflection, and the tapping on the mirror. Sarah listened in silence, her disbelief evident in her voice. "Are you sure you're not just sleep-deprived?" she finally asked. "I wish it were that simple," I replied, my voice shaking. "I don't know what's going on, but I'm scared, Sarah. I've never felt so powerless." Sarah sighed. "I'll come over first thing in the morning. We'll figure this out together, okay?" I thanked her, grateful for her support, and hung up the phone. As I crawled back into bed, I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being watched, that my reflection was still grinning at me from the other side of the mirror. Sleep remained elusive, and I spent the rest of the night tossing and turning, haunted by that malevolent grin. Little did I know that this was just the beginning of a nightmare that would consume my life, a nightmare with a reflection that would haunt my every waking moment and refuse to stop smiling. Morning arrived with a gray pallor, the world outside my window obscured by thick clouds. I had barely slept, my mind tormented by the image of my grinning reflection. Sarah would be here soon, and I clung to the hope that she would help me make sense of this nightmare. As I dragged myself out of bed and made my way to the bathroom, dread gnawed at my insides. I hesitated at the bathroom door, fearing what I might see in the mirror. With trembling hands, I pushed it open. My reflection was there, as expected, but the grin had grown wider, more malevolent. It was as though it had relished my fear and was reveling in it. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice quivering. "What do you want?" Of course, there was no response. My reflection continued to grin back at me, its eyes cold and calculating. I splashed water on my face, hoping to wash away the fear, but it clung to me like a second skin. The doorbell rang, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. Sarah was here. I rushed to the front door and let her in, relief flooding through me at the sight of her familiar face. "Hey," she said, concern etched across her features. "You look like you haven't slept." I led her to the living room, where I recounted the events of the previous day and the nightmarish encounter with my reflection. Sarah listened intently, her brows furrowing as she tried to make sense of it. "I know it sounds crazy," I said, "but you have to believe me, Sarah. I'm not making this up." She reached out and squeezed my hand. "I believe you. We'll get through this together, okay?" We spent the morning scouring the internet for any information that might shed light on my bizarre predicament. We found stories of haunted mirrors and malevolent spirits, but nothing that seemed to match my experience. Frustration and fear gnawed at me as the hours passed. I couldn't escape the feeling that my reflection was watching us, that it reveled in our helplessness. Sarah, ever the problem solver, suggested we consult an expert in the paranormal. "Who do you even call for something like this?" I asked, my voice trembling. Sarah shrugged. "There are paranormal investigators, experts in the occult, and even priests who specialize in exorcisms. We can start with a paranormal investigator. They might have encountered something like this before." I agreed, willing to try anything to rid myself of the sinister presence in my mirror. Sarah made some calls, and we soon found a local paranormal investigator named Dr. Jameson, who was willing to meet with us that afternoon. As we waited for Dr. Jameson's arrival, I couldn't help but feel like a prisoner in my own home. The bathroom mirror had become a malevolent portal, a gateway to something beyond my comprehension. I avoided it as much as possible, fearing the power it held over me. When Dr. Jameson arrived, he was a middle-aged man with a salt and pepper beard, dressed in a tweed jacket that seemed out of place in our modern world. He listened carefully as I recounted my story, his expression unreadable. "Have you tried anything to break the connection with your reflection?" he asked. I shook my head. "I don't even know where to begin. I've been too afraid to confront it." Dr. Jameson nodded. "Fear can be a powerful weapon in the hands of the supernatural. We need to approach this with caution." He asked to see the mirror, and I reluctantly led him to the bathroom. As he examined it, his brow furrowed in deep concentration. He muttered incantations under his breath, sprinkling salt around the mirror's frame. "The mirror," he said, his voice low and solemn, "acts as a conduit for a malevolent entity. It feeds on your fear and your attention, growing stronger with each passing moment. We must sever that connection." "How?" I asked, my voice trembling. Dr. Jameson explained that he would perform a ritual to bind the entity within the mirror, preventing it from manifesting in the physical world. It was a risky endeavor, he warned, and there were no guarantees of success. As he prepared for the ritual, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. The entity had remained dormant for the past few hours, but now, as the ritual began, I felt its malevolent presence intensify. "Stay close," Dr. Jameson instructed. "Your presence is crucial. Together, we can weaken this entity." We stood before the mirror, and Dr. Jameson began chanting incantations in a language I couldn't comprehend. The room seemed to grow colder, and I could see my reflection's grin contort into a snarl of rage. Fear gripped me, but I forced myself to stand my ground. I couldn't let this entity continue to torment me. Together with Dr. Jameson, I focused all my energy on the mirror, on severing the connection once and for all. As the ritual reached its climax, the mirror seemed to shudder, and my reflection let out a blood-curdling scream that sent shivers down my spine. Dr. Jameson's chanting grew louder, more fervent, until finally, with a blinding flash of light, the ritual reached its conclusion. The mirror cracked, a web of fractures spreading across its surface, and my reflection's scream was silenced. The malevolent presence that had haunted me for so long seemed to dissipate into nothingness. I collapsed to the floor, exhausted and shaken. Dr. Jameson helped me to my feet, his expression grave. "We've bound the entity, but it may not be gone for good," he said. "You must be vigilant. Do not let fear consume you. It is fear that gives these entities power." I nodded, my gratitude to Dr. Jameson overwhelming. For the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. As he left, Sarah and I stood in the shattered bathroom, staring at the fractured mirror. My reflection was no longer grinning. It was distorted, broken, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I saw a flicker of relief in my own eyes. Little did I know that the nightmare was far from over, that the malevolent entity bound within the mirror would find new ways to torment me, and that my reflection's smile, though shattered, would continue to haunt me in ways I couldn't yet imagine. In the days following Dr. Jameson's ritual, I tried to regain some semblance of normalcy. The bathroom mirror, now shattered and cracked, remained a constant reminder of the malevolent entity that had haunted me. Although the grin was gone, a lingering unease settled within me like a shadow. Sarah, ever the supportive friend, stayed with me for a few nights, assuring me that everything would be okay. She helped me clean up the shards of glass from the shattered mirror and sealed the bathroom with heavy curtains, as if to keep the malevolence at bay. Yet, despite our efforts, I couldn't escape the feeling that the entity still watched, waiting for an opportunity to strike. The unease gnawed at me, making every moment alone a torment. One evening, as Sarah and I sat in the dimly lit living room, trying to distract ourselves with a movie, I noticed a faint whispering. It was a subtle sound, like the soft rustling of leaves in the wind, barely audible over the movie soundtrack. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my heart pounding. Sarah frowned, straining to listen. "I don't hear anything." I dismissed it as my imagination, attributing it to the lingering fear that had taken hold of me. But the whispering persisted, growing louder and more insistent. I couldn't make out the words, but it was as if the very air around me had come alive with malevolent intent. "Something's wrong," I said, rising from my seat. "I need to check the bathroom." Sarah followed me, her concern deepening. We entered the bathroom, and I felt a chill run down my spine. The curtains that had sealed the shattered mirror were drawn back, revealing the fractured glass. "What the hell?" Sarah muttered. I approached the mirror cautiously, and as I gazed into the shattered glass, I saw it. My reflection, still distorted and broken, but with a glint of malice in its eyes. It was as if the entity had found a way to communicate through the fractured surface. "What do you want?" I whispered, my voice quivering. The whispering grew louder, and for the first time, I could make out the words. It spoke in a voice that was both chilling and familiar, as if it knew my deepest fears. "I want to be whole again," it hissed. A shiver ran down my spine. "You can't have that. You're bound to the mirror." Sarah grabbed my arm, her eyes wide with fear. "We need to leave now." We hurried out of the bathroom and into the living room, but the whispering followed us, growing louder with each step. It echoed through the walls, a cacophony of voices that seemed to speak directly to my soul. "Leave this place," it taunted, "or we will consume you." Terror gripped me, and I realized that this entity was not bound by the shattered mirror. It had found a way to infiltrate my home, to torment me wherever I went. Sarah and I rushed to the front door. desperation driving us. We needed to escape, to find a safe haven away from this malevolent force. But as I reached for the doorknob, it refused to turn. The door was locked, as if by some invisible hand. Panic welled up inside me, and I pounded on the door, screaming for help. But there was no response, no one to save us from the darkness that had taken hold of my home. The whispering grew louder, more sinister, as if it reveled in our fear. I turned to Sarah, my eyes filled with tears. We have to find another way out. Together, we searched the house for an escape route, but every door and window was sealed shut, as if the very walls were conspiring against us. The entity's whispers surrounded us, drowning out all reason. As we retreated to the living room, defeated and exhausted, I realized that the entity was not content with tormenting me. It wanted something more, something darker. And I had a sinking feeling that I was the key to its twisted desires. Sarah and I huddled together, our fear palpable in the air. The entity's whispers grew louder, forming words that chilled me to the core. "You are ours now," it declared. "You will never escape." In the suffocating darkness of that cursed house, I knew that the nightmare was far from over. The malevolent entity, once bound within the shattered mirror, had found a new way to torment me, and its insidious smile would continue to haunt my every waking moment. Days turned into weeks as Sarah and I remained trapped in the house, imprisoned by an unseen malevolent force. The entity's whispers had become a constant presence, a torment that gnawed at the edges of our sanity. We slept little and ate even less, as our fear grew with each passing moment. The house itself seemed to have transformed into a nightmarish labyrinth. Hallways stretched endlessly, leading us in circles, and doors appeared and disappeared at will. It was as if the very architecture of the house had become a weapon against us. Sarah and I had tried everything to escape, from smashing windows to prying open doors, but our efforts were in vain. The entity, it seemed, delighted in our desperation, taunting us with promises of freedom that remained forever out of reach. One night, as we huddled in the living room, the entity's whispers took on a new chilling tone. It spoke of ancient rituals, of sacrifices made to gain unimaginable power. I could feel its malevolence seeping into my thoughts, whispering dark temptations that threatened to consume me. "No," I whispered to myself, clutching my head, as if trying to keep the darkness at bay. "I won't listen to you." Sarah, her eyes wide with terror, watched as I struggled against the entity's influence. "Stay with me," she pleaded. "We can fight this." But the entity's whispers grew louder, drowning out Sarah's pleas. It spoke of a ritual that would bind its power to me, granting me unimaginable abilities at the cost of my soul. The temptation was overwhelming, and I felt myself teetering on the edge of madness. In a desperate bid to break the entity's hold, I grabbed a nearby chair and hurled it at the shattered bathroom mirror. The glass shattered further, and my distorted reflection seemed to writhe in pain. For a moment, the entity's whispers fell silent, but it was a brief respite. The entity's anger surged, and the whispers returned with a vengeance. It threatened to consume us, to drag us into the abyss of its malevolence. As Sarah and I clung to each other, our minds on the brink of shattering, a glimmer of hope appeared. A faint, distant sound echoed through the house, a voice calling out to us. "Is anyone there? Can you hear me?" We rushed toward the sound. Hope rekindled in our hearts. It led us to a small, hidden room we had never noticed before. In the center of the room stood an old, ornate mirror, untouched by the malevolent force that had plagued the house. The voice grew clearer, and we realized it belonged to a young woman on the other side of the mirror. She introduced herself as Emily, a previous resident of the house who had encountered the same malevolent entity. "They trapped me in this mirror," Emily explained, her voice filled with anguish. "But I've been searching for a way to help someone else escape." Tears filled my eyes as I realized that Emily might be our only hope. She explained that the entity's power was tied to the shattered mirror in the bathroom, and if we could somehow destroy it, we might break free from its grip. With renewed determination, Sarah and I returned to the bathroom. The entity's whispers grew louder and more desperate as we approached the shattered mirror. I grabbed a piece of glass from the floor and, with all my strength, drove it into the heart of the mirror. A blinding flash of light erupted from the mirror, and a deafening scream echoed through the house. I felt an overwhelming surge of power, as if the entity's malevolence was coursing through me. The shattered mirror crumbled into pieces, and the entity's presence vanished. Sarah and I collapsed to the floor, exhausted and shaken, but finally free from the nightmare that had consumed us. As we caught our breath, Emily's voice echoed through the house, thanking us for setting her free. She had sacrificed herself to help us escape, and her spirit would forever be bound to the mirror in the hidden room. We left the house that had become a prison, our hearts heavy with the knowledge of the darkness that still lurked within its walls. The malevolent entity had been vanquished, but its memory would haunt our nightmares for years to come. Sarah and I vowed never to speak of the horrors we had endured, for fear that the entity might one day return. We went our separate ways, carrying with us the scars of our ordeal. But deep down, I knew that the malevolent force had left its mark on me. I had tasted its power, and the temptation to wield it lingered in the darkest corners of my mind. As I moved forward with my life, I couldn't escape the feeling that the nightmare was not truly over, that the entity's malevolent smile still lurked in the depths of my soul, waiting for the right moment to resurface and consume me once more. Years passed, but the malevolent force that had once haunted me continued to cast its long, chilling shadow over my life. Though I had managed to escape the house and the shattered mirror, the entity's presence remained an indelible part of me. I had tried to put the past behind me, burying the memories of that harrowing ordeal deep within the recesses of my mind. But the whispers, the temptation, and the sinister grin that had plagued me still lingered in the darkest corners of my thoughts. I had become reclusive, avoiding mirrors whenever possible. Even a glimpse of my own reflection sent shivers down my spine, a reminder of the malevolent entity that had sought to consume my soul. The once familiar act of looking into a mirror had become a torturous ordeal, a constant battle against the darkness that threatened to overtake me. Friends and family had grown concerned, noting my withdrawal from the world and my ever-present sense of unease. They urged me to seek therapy, convinced that the trauma of my past had left me scared. Reluctantly, I began therapy, hoping to find some semblance of normalcy. Dr. Martinez, my therapist, was patient and understanding, but as I recounted my experiences, even she struggled to comprehend the extent of the horrors I had faced. It's not uncommon for traumatic experiences to leave lasting effects, Dr. Martinez said, her voice filled with empathy. We'll work through this together. But the malevolent entity that had once tormented me wasn't so easily defeated. It seemed to revel in the therapy sessions, whispering dark thoughts and temptations that threatened to tear apart the fragile threads of my sanity. One evening, as I sat in my dimly lit apartment, the entity's whispers grew louder and more insistent. It taunted me, promising power beyond imagination if only I would embrace the darkness within. "You can be unstoppable," it whispered, its voice a seductive lure. "All you have to do is let go." I clenched my fists, fighting against the malevolent influence. Dr. Martinez's words echoed in my mind, urging me to resist, to find the strength to overcome the darkness. But the temptation was overwhelming. The thought of wielding such power, of becoming something more than human, was a siren's call that threatened to consume me. In a desperate bid to silence the entity's whispers, I sought refuge in the hidden room of my apartment, a room I had discovered by chance, just as Emily had once discovered the hidden room in the cursed house. Inside, an old, ornate mirror stood, untouched by the malevolent force that had plagued my life. I hoped that, like Emily, I could find a way to break free from the entity's grip. As I stared into the mirror, my reflection distorted and fractured. The entity's whispers grew louder, its malevolence intensifying. It was as if the mirror itself had become a gateway to the malevolent force, a conduit for its power. But this time, I was determined to resist. I focused all my energy on breaking free from the entity's influence, on finding the strength to overcome the darkness that threatened to consume me. The battle within me raged on, a war of wills between the darkness and the sliver of humanity that remained. Sweat poured from my brow as I struggled to maintain control. And then, in a blinding flash of light, I felt the malevolent force recoil. It screamed in agony, its grip loosening, and for the first time in years, I saw my reflection change. The malevolent grin that had haunted me for so long was gone. In its place was a look of anguish and defeat. With a final surge of willpower, I shattered the mirror into 1,000 pieces. The entity's screams echoed through the room, fading into nothingness. I collapsed to the floor, spent and broken, but freed from the malevolent force that had tormented me for so long. Dr. Martinez, who had grown concerned about my well-being, arrived just in time to witness the culmination of my struggle. She helped me to my feet, her eyes filled with compassion. "You did it," she said, her voice filled with relief. "You broke free from its grip." Tears welled up in my eyes as the weight of years of torment lifted from my shoulders. The malevolent entity, once a part of me, was gone, banished into the void. But I knew that the scars of my ordeal would never truly fade. The entity's influence had left its mark on my soul, a reminder of the darkness that lurked within us all. I had faced the abyss and emerged stronger, but I would forever carry the knowledge that the malevolent grin could resurface at any moment, waiting to consume me once more. With the malevolent entity finally banished from my life, a fragile sense of peace descended upon me. Therapy sessions with Dr. Martinez continued, and slowly but surely, I began to rebuild my life. Friends and family, who had stood by me throughout the ordeal, rejoiced in my newfound resilience. However, the scars of my past remained, serving as a constant reminder of the darkness I had faced. Mirrors still filled me with unease, and I avoided them whenever possible. The fear of the malevolent entity's return lingered in the back of my mind, a specter that haunted my every step. As the months passed, I found solace in simple routines. I immersed myself in work, seeking refuge in the mundane tasks of daily life. It was a way to keep the memories at bay, to distance myself from the horrors of the past. One evening, as I was leaving my office, a familiar voice called out to me from the shadows. It was Dr. Martinez, her expression grave. "I need to speak with you," she said, leading me to a quiet corner of the building. Concern washed over me as I listened to her words. She explained that she had been researching the malevolent entity that had tormented me, delving into ancient texts and forbidden lore to uncover its origins. "I believe," she said hesitantly, "that the entity may not have been destroyed as completely as we thought." Dread settled in the pit of my stomach. "What do you mean?" Dr. Martinez went on to explain that the entity had existed for centuries, lurking in the shadows, seeking out those who were vulnerable to its influence. It was a malevolent force that fed on fear and despair, and it was not so easily vanquished. "I fear that it may have found a way to survive, to lay dormant and bide its time," she said. "And it may be seeking a new host." The revelation sent shivers down my spine. I had thought the nightmare was over, that I had finally escaped its clutches. But now, the specter of the malevolent entity loomed once more, threatening to consume me. Dr. Martinez urged me to be vigilant, to watch for signs of its return. She had a theory that the entity was drawn to those who had previously been affected by it, as if it left a mark on their souls that called out to it. As the days turned into weeks, I couldn't escape the feeling that the malevolent entity was watching, waiting for an opportunity to strike. I saw glimpses of its influence in everyday occurrences, a flicker of movement in a darkened corner, a whisper on the wind, a reflection that seemed just slightly off. I reached out to Sarah, the one person who had shared my ordeal, and we agreed to meet. She too had felt the entity's lingering presence, and together we sought solace in each other's company. Over cups of coffee, we shared our fears and experiences, and it became clear that the malevolent entity was not finished with us. It whispered to us in the shadows, reminding us of the power it once held over us. "We can't let it consume us again," Sarah said, determination in her eyes. I nodded in agreement. We couldn't go back to living in fear, constantly looking over our shoulders. We had to find a way to confront the entity, to banish it once and for all. Dr. Martinez, with her knowledge of the entity's history and my experience in battling it, became our ally in the fight against the malevolent force. Together, we delved into the forbidden texts and ancient rituals that might hold the key to defeating it. As we delved deeper into the lore, it became clear that the entity's vulnerability lay in its dependence on fear and despair. If we could find a way to confront it with courage and hope, we might have a chance of banishing it for good. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Sarah, Dr. Martinez, and I prepared to face the malevolent entity once more. We knew the battle ahead would not be easy, and the specter of the malevolent grin loomed over us like a dark cloud. But we were determined to reclaim our lives, to rid ourselves of the darkness that had haunted us for so long. The malevolent entity might have been relentless, but so were we. And in the darkness, we would find the strength to confront the nightmare that refused to let us go. The malevolent entity's presence grew more palpable with each passing day. It whispered in the stillness of the night, its words a venomous serpent slithering through our thoughts. We knew it was watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, to once again ensnare us in its web of fear and despair. Sarah, Dr. Martinez, and I continued our research, searching for the key to confronting the entity. The ancient texts and rituals we uncovered were filled with cryptic symbols and dark incantations, but we believed that hidden among them was the knowledge we needed to banish the malevolent force once and for all. The days turned into weeks as we pieced together a plan to confront the entity head-on. We knew that we needed to create a powerful ward, a barrier of light and hope that would repel the darkness. Dr. Martinez suggested that we gather a group of individuals who had experienced the entity's influence and empower them with the knowledge and determination to stand against it. Our group grew, each member sharing their own harrowing experiences with the malevolent entity. Some had battled it in the past and survived, while others still felt its insidious presence lurking in the shadows. We trained together, learning to draw strength from one another and to confront our deepest fears. As we delved deeper into the rituals and incantations, we discovered a chant that held the promise of banishing the entity. It was a chant of hope and courage, a declaration of our collective will to overcome the darkness. The night of the confrontation arrived, and we gathered in a circle within the hidden room, where an old ornate mirror stood untouched by the malevolent force. Dr. Martinez, Sarah, and I led the group, guiding them through the ritual and teaching them the chant that would be our weapon against the entity. The mirror became a focal point, a symbol of our defiance in the face of the malevolent force. The room grew charged with energy as we chanted the words of power, our voices growing stronger with each repetition. Suddenly, the mirror began to shudder, and a cold wind swept through the room. The malevolent entity was aware of our presence, and it was not pleased. With a deafening scream, it manifested in the mirror, its distorted form a grotesque parody of my own reflection. Its eyes gleamed with malevolence, and its grin twisted into a snarl of rage. But we were prepared. As a group, we chanted the words of power louder and more fervently, our voices drowning out the entity's screams. The room filled with a blinding light, a beacon of hope that pushed back the darkness. The entity writhed in agony, its form contorting and distorting, as if it were being torn apart by the sheer force of our will. It fought back with all its might, but it was no match for the collective strength of those who had faced its torment. With a final, desperate howl, the entity was pulled back into the shattered mirror, disappearing in a burst of blinding light. The mirror cracked and shattered, its malevolent influence banished once and for all. We stood in the now empty room, our hearts pounding with triumph and relief. The malevolent entity had been vanquished, its power broken, and we were finally freed from its grip. Tears of joy and release filled my eyes as I realized that the malevolent grin that had haunted me for so long was gone. The darkness that had once consumed my thoughts had been banished, and in its place, a sense of peace and hope had taken root. As we left the hidden room, I couldn't help but smile. The nightmare that had haunted me for years was over, and I was determined to embrace the light and live my life without fear. But deep down, I knew that the scars of the past would always remain, a reminder of the malevolent entity that had once tormented me. I had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, and I was prepared to confront whatever challenges the future might hold, knowing that I was no longer alone in my battle against the shadows. With the malevolent entity banished, a newfound sense of peace settled over our lives. The group of survivors, each of us bound by our shared ordeal, found solace and support in one another. We had faced the darkest of nightmares and emerged victorious, and our bond grew stronger with each passing day. For the first time in years, I could look into a mirror without fear, the malevolent grin a distant memory. The reflection that gazed back at me was no longer distorted by darkness. It was a reflection of hope, resilience, and the strength to overcome even the most insidious of horrors. Sarah and I, reunited by our shared experiences, grew closer than ever. We leaned on each other for support and understanding, knowing that the specter of the malevolent entity still lingered in our memories. Our friendship had weathered the darkest of storms, and it was a bond that would never be broken. Dr. Martinez, who had become a pillar of strength and guidance, continued to work with us, helping us heal from the scars of our past. She had dedicated her life to understanding the malevolent entity, and her knowledge had been instrumental in our victory. As the years passed, we remained vigilant, knowing that the malevolent force might still seek to return. But we were no longer the frightened and helpless individuals it had once tormented. We had found our inner strength, and we were prepared to confront any darkness that dared to cross our path. Life moved forward, and we embraced the newfound sense of normalcy that had eluded us for so long. We celebrated holidays, pursued careers, and forged new relationships, all the while cherishing the freedom we had fought so hard to regain. Yet we could never forget the malevolent entity and the lessons it had taught us. We knew that darkness could lurk in the most unexpected places, that evil could manifest in the mundane and everyday. But we were no longer afraid. We were warriors of the light, guardians against the shadows, and our shared experiences had forged an unbreakable bond that nothing could sever. As I gazed into the mirror one morning, I saw my reflection smiling back at me. A genuine, unburdened smile. The malevolent grin had been replaced by a sense of peace and inner strength. I knew that the nightmare was over, but its memory would forever remind me of the indomitable spirit that had allowed us to triumph over the malevolent force. The malevolent entity had sought to consume us, to drown us in fear and despair. But in the end, it had underestimated the power of human resilience, the strength of friendship, and the unwavering determination to face the darkness head-on. And so, with our hearts filled with hope and our spirits unbreakable, we moved forward, ready to embrace the future, knowing that we were forever changed by the horrors we had faced, but also knowing that we were stronger for it. The malevolent entity had been vanquished, and in its place, we had found the light that would guide us on the path to a new beginning. Years turned into decades, and the malevolent entity became a distant memory, a nightmare that we only whispered about in the darkest hours. Life had moved on, and the bonds of our survivor group remained unbreakable. We had grown older, wiser, and had built lives filled with purpose and happiness. I had become a successful author, drawing inspiration from the horrors of our past to create stories of resilience and triumph over darkness. Sarah had dedicated herself to helping others as a therapist, using her own experiences to guide those in need. Dr. Martinez continued her research into the supernatural, determined to ensure that the malevolent entity would never return. But no matter how far we had come, the shadow of the malevolent entity still loomed over us. It was a specter that haunted our dreams, a reminder that evil could never truly be vanquished, only kept at bay. One fateful evening, as I sat alone in my study, writing a new book, A sudden chill filled the room. The air grew heavy with an oppressive darkness, and I felt the malevolent presence once more. My heart raced as I realized that the entity had returned, its insidious influence seeping into the corners of my mind. It whispered in a voice that was both familiar and menacing, a voice that had haunted my nightmares for years. "I never truly left," it hissed. "I've been biding my time, growing stronger, waiting for the perfect moment to return." Fear clawed at my chest as I tried to resist the entity's influence. I knew that I had to warn Sarah and Dr. Martinez to rally our survivor group once more, but the entity's power was overwhelming. As I struggled to maintain control, I saw a flicker of movement in the corner of the room. The mirror that hung on the wall had become a gateway, a portal through which the malevolent entity could manifest. With a sense of dread, I approached the mirror, and there, distorted by the malevolent force, was my own reflection. It grinned at me, a grin filled with malice and triumph. "You can't escape me," it taunted. "I've always been a part of you." Desperation welled up within me as I realized that the malevolent entity had found a new host. Me. It had waited for the perfect moment to return, and now it sought to consume me from within. But I couldn't give in to despair. I had faced the entity before and emerged victorious. I knew that I had to resist its influence, to find the strength to banish it once and for all. Summoning all the courage I could muster, I whispered the chant we had used to confront the entity years ago, the words of hope and courage that had banished it into the shattered mirror. The room filled with a blinding light, pushing back the darkness. The entity howled in agony, its distorted form writhing in torment. I felt its grip on my mind loosen, and with a final surge of willpower, I shattered the mirror into 1,000 pieces. The malevolent force was pulled back into the shattered glass, disappearing in a burst of blinding light. The mirror, now broken and powerless, lay in ruins on the floor. I collapsed to the ground, exhausted but triumphant. The malevolent entity had once again been banished, and I was free from its grip. As I caught my breath, I knew that the battle against the darkness would never truly be over. The malevolent force had shown me that evil could always find a way to return, that it could lie dormant for years, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But I was no longer the frightened and helpless individual it had once tormented. I had faced the entity and emerged stronger, and I was prepared to confront whatever challenges the future might hold. The malevolent entity had underestimated the power of human resilience, the strength of friendship, and the unwavering determination to face the darkness head-on. And in the end, it had been defeated once more. As I gazed at the shattered mirror, I knew that the malevolent grin that had haunted me for so long was gone. The darkness that had once consumed my thoughts had been banished, and in its place, a sense of peace and inner strength had taken root. But I also knew that the scars of the past would always remain, a reminder of the malevolent entity that had once tormented me. I had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, and I was prepared to confront whatever challenges the future might hold, knowing that I was no longer alone in my battle against the shadows. The malevolent entity had been banished, and in its place, a newfound sense of hope and resilience had taken root. And with the support of my survivor group, we would continue to stand against the darkness, ready to confront whatever horrors might come our way. In the aftermath of the malevolent entity's second banishment, life settled into a fragile but peaceful balance. I, along with Sarah, Dr. Martinez, and the rest of our survivor group, remained vigilant, knowing that the entity could return at any moment. We continued to study the ancient texts and rituals, determined to uncover the secrets that would keep the darkness at bay. Years turned into decades, and we watched as the world changed around us. The scars of our past remained, etched into our souls, but they had become a source of strength rather than fear. We had become guardians of a hidden knowledge, protectors of the light, and we were prepared to face any challenge that came our way. As our group grew older, we passed down our knowledge to the next generation, ensuring that they would be ready to confront the malevolent entity if it ever returned. We taught them the rituals and incantations, the chants of hope and courage, and the importance of standing together in the face of darkness. But the entity remained dormant, its presence a distant memory. It seemed that our vigilance and determination had kept it at bay, and we dared to hope that it had been banished for good. As the years passed, I found solace in my writing, using my experiences to create stories of resilience and triumph over darkness. My books became bestsellers, reaching a wide audience and spreading the message that even in the darkest of times, there was always hope. Sarah continued her work as a therapist, helping others overcome their own traumas and fears. Dr. Martinez's research into the supernatural continued, and she became a respected authority in her field. Our survivor group remained close, a source of support and strength that transcended the passage of time. We celebrated milestones together, shared our joys and sorrows, and knew that we could count on each other no matter what. But deep down, we knew that the malevolent entity was not truly gone. It was a force that had existed for centuries, and it was unlikely to be defeated so easily. We remained vigilant, ready to confront the darkness if it ever returned. And so, as the years turned into centuries, our legacy endured. We were the guardians of the light, the keepers of the knowledge that had allowed us to triumph over the malevolent force. We knew that our battle was far from over, but we faced the future with courage and determination, ready to confront whatever horrors might come our way. The malevolent entity had shown us the depths of human resilience and the power of friendship. It had tested our strength and determination, and we had emerged stronger for it. And with the support of our survivor group and the knowledge we had gained, we were prepared to face the darkness, no matter how long it took. The legacy of our battle against the malevolent entity would live on, a reminder that even in the face of the most insidious of horrors, there was always hope and the strength to overcome even the darkest of nightmares. Centuries passed, and the malevolent entity became little more than a legend, a dark tale whispered around campfires and in the darkest corners of the internet. Our survivor group had become a secret society, passing down the knowledge of our experiences from generation to generation. We hoped that the entity had been banished for good, that it had become nothing more than a distant memory. But as the years turned into millennia, a new threat emerged. It started with whispers in the shadows, rumors of a malevolent force that had returned to wreak havoc on the world. At first, we dismissed these stories as superstition, the product of overactive imaginations. But as the reports grew more frequent and the evidence more compelling, we realized that the malevolent entity had indeed returned. It had found a new host, a vessel for its dark power, and it was spreading fear and despair once more. Our survivor group reconvened, gathering the descendants of those who had faced the entity in the past. We shared our knowledge and experiences, preparing the new generation for the battle that lay ahead. Dr. Martinez, now ancient but still sharp of mind, explained that the malevolent entity's return was a dire omen. It had grown stronger during its centuries of dormancy, and it had learned to adapt and evolve. We knew that we couldn't confront the entity in the same way as before. Our old rituals and chants might not be enough to banish it this time. We needed a new strategy, a way to confront the darkness with even greater strength and determination. As we delved deeper into our research, we uncovered ancient texts that spoke of a legendary artifact, a weapon of light and hope that could banish the malevolent entity once and for all. It was a talisman of immense power, said to be hidden in a place of great significance. With the knowledge of this artifact, our survivor group embarked on a quest to find it. We traveled to ancient ruins, deciphered cryptic symbols, and faced countless trials and challenges along the way. It was a journey fraught with danger, but we were determined to succeed. Finally, after years of searching, we stood before the hidden chamber where the legendary artifact lay. It was a magnificent crystal, pulsing with an inner light, radiating a sense of hope and courage. With the artifact in hand, we returned to our hidden society, ready to confront the malevolent entity once and for all. But we knew that the battle ahead would be unlike anything we had faced before. The entity had grown more powerful, more cunning, and it would stop at nothing to consume us. As we gathered in the secret chamber, the malevolent entity manifested before us, its presence a palpable darkness that filled the room. It grinned, its malevolence more twisted and sinister than ever. "You thought you could banish me," it hissed. "But I am eternal, and I have returned to claim what is rightfully mine." With the artifact in hand, we chanted the ancient incantation, calling upon the power of light and hope to banish the entity. The crystal pulsed with energy, and a blinding light filled the room. The entity screamed in agony, its distorted form writhing and contorting. It fought back with all its might, but this time, we were prepared. We had the power of the artifact on our side, a force of light and hope that pushed back the darkness. With a final desperate howl, the malevolent entity was pulled into the crystal, disappearing in a burst of blinding light. The artifact sealed shut, containing the darkness once and for all. As we stood in the now empty chamber, we knew that the malevolent entity had been banished for good. The artifact, a symbol of hope and courage, had proven to be more powerful than the darkness that had plagued us for centuries. Our survivor group, now older and wiser, celebrated our victory, knowing that we had finally triumphed over the malevolent force that had tormented us for so long. We had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, and we were prepared to confront whatever challenges the future might hold. The legacy of our battle against the malevolent entity would live on, a reminder that even in the face of the most insidious of horrors, there was always hope and the strength to overcome even the darkest of nightmares. And as we looked to the future, we knew that our work was not yet done. We would continue to guard the artifact, to ensure that the malevolent entity would never return. Our vigilance would remain unwavering, for we understood that darkness could always find a way to resurface. But we were no longer the frightened and helpless individuals we had once been. We had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, and we were prepared to confront whatever challenges the future might hold, knowing that we were no longer alone in our battle against the shadows. The malevolent entity had been banished, and in its place, a newfound sense of hope and resilience had taken root. And with the support of our survivor group and the power of the artifact, we would face the future with courage and determination, ready to confront whatever horrors might come our way. With the malevolent entity sealed within the artifact, our survivor group knew that our duty was far from over. We became the guardians of the crystal, entrusted with the responsibility of ensuring that the darkness would never be unleashed upon the world again. We established a secret order dedicated to protecting the artifact and passing down the knowledge of our experiences from generation to generation. Our mission was clear: to maintain an eternal vigil, ready to confront any threat that might arise. As the years turned into centuries, our order remained hidden, working in the shadows to safeguard the crystal and the world from the malevolent entity's return. We watched as empires rose and fell, as technologies advanced and civilizations changed, but our purpose remained unchanged. The artifact became a symbol of hope and courage, a beacon of light in a world that sometimes seemed consumed by darkness. It was a reminder that even in the face of the most insidious of horrors, there was always a force of good ready to stand against the shadows. Our order's knowledge and rituals were passed down from one generation to the next, ensuring that our descendants would be prepared to confront the malevolent entity if it ever returned. We taught them the chants of hope and courage, the incantations that had banished the darkness, and the importance of standing together in the face of evil. But as the centuries passed, the memory of the malevolent entity began to fade, becoming little more than a legend. Some within our order questioned the necessity of our eternal vigil, believing that the darkness had been defeated once and for all. It was during a time of complacency that the malevolent entity made its move. It had grown patient, biding its time, and now it saw an opportunity to return. One fateful night, as we gathered in the hidden chamber to perform our rituals, the malevolent entity manifested before us. Its presence was more powerful and malevolent than ever, a darkness that threatened to consume everything in its path. "You thought you could seal me away forever," it sneered. "But I am eternal, and I have returned to claim what is rightfully mine." Panic filled the chamber as we realized that the entity had found a way to break free from the artifact. It had grown stronger during its centuries of imprisonment, and it was determined to exact its revenge. With a surge of malevolent power, the entity attacked, its dark tendrils lashing out at our members. We fought back with all our might, using the knowledge and rituals passed down through generations, but the entity's power was overwhelming. As we struggled to contain the darkness, a voice from the shadows spoke with a clarity that cut through the chaos. It was Dr. Martinez, now ancient but still filled with determination. "We underestimated the entity's resilience," she said, "but we must remember the strength that brought us victory in the past. We must unite and confront it together." With her words as a rallying cry, our order came together, channeling the power of the artifact and the chants of hope and courage. The crystal pulsed with energy, and a blinding light filled the chamber. The malevolent entity howled in agony, its form writhing and distorting. It fought back with all its might, but this time, we were prepared. We had learned from our past mistakes, and we were determined to banish the darkness once and for all. With a final, desperate howl, the entity was pulled back into the crystal, disappearing in a burst of blinding light. The artifact sealed shut, containing the darkness once more. We stood in the now empty chamber, our hearts pounding with exhaustion and relief. The malevolent entity had been defeated once again, and we knew that our duty to safeguard the crystal and protect the world from its return would continue for generations to come. Our order had learned the importance of eternal vigilance, the need to never underestimate the power of darkness, and the strength that could be found in unity and determination. We had faced the malevolent entity and emerged stronger, and we were prepared to confront whatever challenges the future might hold. As we left the hidden chamber, we knew that our mission was far from over. The malevolent entity might have been defeated, but it was not truly gone. It was a force that had existed for centuries, and it would always seek to return. But we were no longer the frightened and helpless individuals we had once been. We had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, and we were prepared to confront whatever horrors might come our way, knowing that we were no longer alone in our battle against the shadows. The malevolent entity had been banished once more, and in its place, a renewed sense of hope and resilience had taken root. And with the support of our order and the power of the artifact, we would face the future with courage and determination, ready to confront whatever nightmares might arise.